All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Bucci Radio. Today I have an amazing guest with me, Kara Corey.
Choosing every meal based on taste, based on flavor and convenience, really putting some time and effort into your health because we are all worth it. We have one life to live, and why not live it feeling good in the bodies that we were born into?
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Bucci Radio. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. It is a really good episode, probably one of my favorites that I've done so far, so I'm excited for you guys to listen in. But I'm going to say something really quick just in the beginning of this podcast to mention to some of you who may have watched my YouTube video from yesterday. If you guys are listening to this podcast later, the YouTube video that I am referring to is my career transformation story video. A lot of you guys who watched that video, or people that have followed my stuff for the last few months, are interested in what I do with business. And a lot of you guys who watched that video really resonated with what I was saying. So for those of you who are interested in building your personal business online, in the fitness industry or in an industry that you're in, for a select couple of people, I put together a 12-week mastermind to put together your own fitness brand and to build your own personal brand. So literally every week, like I said, people ask me how I did it, how I built my personal brand, and they also follow up with, do I mentor or do I coach people on this? And up until now, the answer has always been no. But what I decided to do, and again, I don't know if I'll do this again, but I did put together a small group of motivated, committed, aspiring influencers who want to build their own brand in fitness and who want support mentoring on how to do that. So if you're one of those people who wants to build your own brand, you have a big passion for fitness, you have a big passion on making an impact and helping people, but you just don't know how to go full time or how to do it 100% in, or you just don't have the tools and resources to figure it out on your own, where you can build an audience big enough to go full time, then this program may be for you. So for the record as well, this is not for probably 99% of the people listening to this. So it's just for people that are highly committed, time-wise, energy-wise, and financially-wise as well. So because I don't do this for too many people, it'll only be open for the next couple of days. I'm only working with a maximum of like 15 to 20 people. So if you would like to apply, go ahead and go to amandabucci.com/apply, or just check out the link in the blog attached to this podcast. It's on amandabucci.com. If not, no worries. This is not for most people. Like I said, not for most people listening, but if you feel like this is you, if you feel like this resonates with you, go ahead and click out of the podcast right now and go to that link, amandabucci.com, before the spots are filled, and fill out your application. And if it's not, just go ahead and stay with me. We have an amazing show for you today, so let's get right into it. Today I have an amazing guest with me, and I'm so excited to bring her on because she has a really great point of view about the topic that we're talking about today. The topic that we're talking about has to do with eating a healthy diet. It has to do with eating for aesthetics versus eating for actual health. We're going to get into food. We're going to get into your relationships with food. We're going to get into what the right information actually is, what you guys are actually looking for when it comes to finding someone with sound, proper advice. There's so much misinformation out there, guys, and you guys know this. You'll look at different articles and you'll look at different kinds of diets, and everybody has some sort of conflicting ideas about nutrition that a lot of the time you truly just don't know which way to go, like what way is up. So today our special guest is Kara Corey. Say hi, Kara.
Hi guys. Nice to be here.
Kara is a YouTuber, and she's also a registered dietitian. She is a bikini pro in the WNBF, and I have been following Kara for about a year and a half now, I think it's been. And she has really great YouTube videos where she does bikini competition vlogs, she does regular lifestyle vlogs, she has recipes, and she does these things that she has in a series called Dietician Talks, which I personally love, and I think that's what you're known for as well. Yeah. Wouldn't you say so?
Yeah, that's definitely the number one thing people say that they like the YouTube channel for, is the Dietician Talks.
Right, of course. And the reason for that is likely just because, again, there's so much misinformation and you're just putting out the truth, which is amazing. So excited to have Kara on. So before we get started in like the real brunt of the content today, Kara, why don't you just give us a little bit of a background about you?
Sure. So I was interested in fitness at a very young age. I remember being down in the basement working out, doing my mom's Jane Fonda videos. If anyone remembers those, she did like step aerobics and stuff like that. So I always had this weird interest in fitness from like a young age, and I just wanted to work out and join a gym. At 15 years old, I was just very interested in that. I was very interested in health. My family, I have a history of, a lot of overweight, obese genetics in my family, a lot of heart disease, and just got really interested in health at a young age, which kind of helped me decide I wanted to become a dietitian and be in the field of dietetics, because it just seemed like there were so many health issues just within my own family that I wanted to find a way to, be in a field that could help other people. So I decided to become a dietitian. I went to school for it, and part of going to school was really great. It was tough. Like I had to work 3 jobs ultimately to support myself while going through college. I worked at a gym, I worked at a Blockbuster, I worked at a hospital, like I was constantly having to hustle to get through school. It's that grind you have to for dietetics. And it was all worth it though. It was a really, really great field to enter. And I just always knew I wanted to do something to help others. I wanted to educate myself first and also help others. It worked for me. Not a lot of people know what field they want to go into. It can be really tough when you're that young, but I got very fortunate that I was able to kind of hone in on what my passion was at an early age.
Right. Yeah. That's definitely
I
difficult.
knew that was something I was interested in. So it made it very easy to kind of, as much as I had to hustle and work hard, to get the degree, it all paid off,
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And then, so how did you go from going to college for that? How did you get into the fitness, bodybuilding, bikini competitor, and YouTube world?
Right. So I initially started out, I was a long distance runner for a while. I was doing marathons, and I've done over like 10 marathons.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I had, my ultimate goal there was running the Boston Marathon. And I eventually qualified, ran the Boston Marathon in 2000.
You have to qualify for the marathon,
Yes,
correct? You can't
do.
just go do it.
Right. For Boston, you do. So for, your age and gender, there's a certain time you had to get. So I had to qualify with a marathon under 3 hours and 40 minutes. So it took me about 9 times, but I finally did it. I actually, part of what helped me qualify for Boston, interestingly enough, was cutting back on my endurance running and the amount of cardio I was focusing on. And I incorporated weightlifting. I joined like a bodybuilder gym where I live, well-rounded, and they trained me on lifting weights and kind of working out smarter, not harder, and getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that was a concept I had never utilized before with my workouts. So that really helped me.
Cool. So the weightlifting helped with your endurance for running. That's so interesting.
Yeah, it's crazy. So I actually previously was running marathons at like 4 hours, and I just could not get my time under 4 hours. Incorporated the weight training. I did more like high intensity cardio, more intervals, and I ended up running my marathon in like 3:38. So I improved my time by like 22 minutes.
That's a lot.
So I was hooked. I'm like, oh my God, weightlifting, I loved it. I loved the way it made my body look, how I felt. I felt stronger. I always kind of had that like a runner's body that was like, I was thin, but I had a higher body fat percentage for how little I weighed.
Right.
So it was crazy how it transformed my body. And so after running Boston, I kind of felt like I had achieved what I wanted to achieve with running. And I was on to the next goal. And for me, I really wanted to compete in bodybuilding. So I immediately signed up for my first competition and shifted my training and my eating and started focusing on bodybuilding, which I absolutely fell in love with.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And then how many competitions did it take you till you got your pro card?
Let's see. I kind of lost count how many I did. I competed.
Many.
Yeah. I just got my pro card last April 2016. So it took
Congratulations.
Thank you. It took, I guess it took 5 years overall, but I did take like a period of a year and a half off in between competing to just lift and not be so dieted down all the time.
Right.
So it did take me a little bit, but I also was doing MPC to start out with. I did MPC for a while. I loved MPC. I loved kind of the structure of MPC with the posing. I wasn't as much of a fan of the posing with natural organizations because I wasn't as confident in my posing, and you have to do a lot more on stage with natural organizations.
Yeah, you have to do instead of you just go in the middle, you have to do like a T-walk, correct?
Yep. You have to have your whole individual routine that you put with music. And, so for people that love the stage, they love that part. And for me, I didn't feel as confident with that. But I ended up switching, and with MPC, I just felt like being a natural athlete. I kind of took a step back and I was like, why am I not promoting natural bodybuilding? This is something I believe in. I feel females should be able to compete and do it naturally and not enhance themselves. And so I kind of shifted my mindset and wanted to work towards the natural organizations. And that took me about a year before I got my pro card. So it was like, I think 4 or 5 shows before I did.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then when did you start doing YouTube?
Yeah. So YouTube kind of came within all that when I started shifting gears from running to bodybuilding. At that time, that was 2011, which feels like ages ago. But if you think back to YouTube, there was nothing out there. There really wasn't a lot out there. So I remember doing my first competition and I couldn't even picture what show day would look like. I couldn't even picture what posing should look like. I would look up old videos. I think bikini's only been around since 2010. Like it's not very old. So there wasn't a lot of information out there. And I remember just being very creative with like my recipes. And, at that time, my husband said, why don't you, start a YouTube? Like that would be great. So he does the camera component of it. So I didn't have to worry about learning that piece. I just kind of was able to, do my thing.
That's what your husband does for a job, correct?
Yeah. He does a lot of graphic design, and he's had a camera in his hand since he was like 15 years old, like filming skateboard videos and editing those. So he's constantly loved that. So we kind of worked together on that. It's funny to look back on the first videos I did with my cooking videos because it's like 20 minutes long, and I feel like I didn't really know how to show my personality quite yet, but it was really cool to start out. And, my whole point was just being able to reach other people. Like I knew I didn't have a lot of information, and I just wanted to help people. I wanted to share with them what I had learned, and also start to incorporate the nutrition aspect of things, and show people how to make healthier recipes and that it can be done and it can be easy, and, make things more accessible to people, because it is very expensive to hire a dietitian or a personal trainer. So I wanted to kind of, in a way, give back and help people.
Right. Now, that's so true. And it's so awesome that YouTube is like a free way to get information. And then when you first started, there wasn't that much information. But I think what you've done a really good job is with like just staying true to your why. And your why is always just to help educate people and make your information that you have as a registered dietitian more accessible to people that might not be able to afford it. And I think that you've just done a really good job at keeping that why always in the back of your head when you're delivering your content. So
thank you. That means a lot, because it's funny. I've been at bodybuilding shows where, I've had girls come up to me and they're like, I followed your videos for my whole prep. And, and then after the fact, I'll, have people say to me, why do you give out so much free information? Some of these people are your direct competition at shows. Why would you do this? Why would you help people and share your secrets? But I've just never looked at it like that. Like I've never felt, I guess maybe I'm just not that competitive, but like you said, my why has always just been to be able to reach people. And YouTube has just been such a great way to reach so many people and share. And if some way I'm helping someone, feel more motivated or inspired, or like they have a better understanding of how to, eat or, live a healthier lifestyle, then that to me is like so fulfilling. And that's why I got into the field.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think all the Bucci Radio podcast listeners as well are those people that are just genuinely interested in hearing information. They're the critical thinkers, or the people that are just looking to be inspired or learn more.
Right.
So that's exactly why I wanted to bring you on today.
Yes, it's so great to be here. And I love like hearing from people, and I know you do the same on your YouTube as well. Like you want to know what the people watching your channel want to learn from you, and we try to give back and incorporate that,
Right. And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. So all of the topics that we are going to discuss today have to do with what you guys have asked me, and likely have asked Kara plenty of times over YouTube or over our other social media platforms. And there's just so many questions, constantly questions. So we're going to get into it and start kind of talking about the idea of eating for health and eating for aesthetics. So a lot of our audiences may have come to our channels because they've seen that we're competitors, or we've seen that we're bodybuilders, and they're really also concerned for themselves, especially younger girls. How do I look better? How do I get abs? How do I get my butt bigger? How do I get more toned or sculpted shoulders? Like all of that stuff is very important to a younger generation, or just honestly, not even just a younger generation, people in general.
Right.
Yeah. Everyone's very much so like looking for that, especially with magazines and society and Instagram, social media. People are constantly just looking better and better, or we're just getting exposed to it more and more. So society just thinks like, okay, I have to look better. Where do I find the information to do that?
Right. It's definitely a challenging time, I think, with, before we just had TVs and magazines, I feel like when I was growing up, and now you have that whole social media aspect as well with Instagram and YouTube. And, you only see a snapshot of people, and you see people who are looking fantastic 100% of the time. They're lean, they're shredded, they have abs, they have all those things you just talked about. And we don't always know what's going on. We don't always know how or why people look that way and how they're able to maintain it. And sometimes, people don't care. They just want to know, how do I look like that? What do I need to do to look like that? And people don't realize sometimes the unfortunate behind the scenes stuff that people are doing to look like that all the time. Then you have the other people that do post their shredded photos the whole year, even though they don't look like that. You have those people too that don't even always look like that, or the magic of editing and people make
lighting, all that stuff.
All those factors that draw you into that aesthetic look.
Yeah, and then we all get very fixated on that, I feel. Like, I'm obviously guilty of it as well.
Sure.
Like, I got into fitness because I wanted to do bikini competitions and look better.
All of us in bodybuilding have that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, I feel like there's just this idea behind, like, asking for nutrition advice in order to change the way we look, but not so much as to change the way we feel, our relationship with food, our insides, how our gut health is, stuff like that. So we're going to go ahead and start off with eating for aesthetics. And I talked about this in a previous podcast, if it fits your macros versus clean eating. So we're not going to go too deep into like how to eat for aesthetics, because we can talk about fat loss and muscle growth all day. But something that I want to talk to you about is how focusing so hardly on eating for aesthetics can create some sort of eating disorders or disordered eating patterns.
Right. And this is a huge, huge issue we see right now, especially not only in bodybuilding, but I think just with, social media and how great people look all the time. But that is something a lot of people are so focused on. And like you said, they're not thinking about anything else other than, I want to look my best. And that's something I'm super passionate about and try to focus in on my YouTube channel, is empowering people to think about, how do I eat for health? Or not even how to eat for health, but more so, how do I shift my mindset to focus more on health and be okay with eating for health? A lot of people with eating for aesthetics, part of the issue that happens is we are so focused on eating for that goal of aesthetics that we don't even think about listening to our bodies anymore. That's one of the biggest things that I notice with people, is people don't know when they're hungry. They have no clue when they're full. They don't know when they should eat or why they should eat. They don't know when to stop. They don't know what foods are okay. They have
what's good, what's bad
foods, and all of those normal feelings with food are just, people lose sight of them, and they don't understand how to eat normally anymore, if there is a normal, I guess. So it can create really bad relationships with food. And I hear that all the time, that people, they have a lot of guilt associated with what they eat if they go off their meal plan or their macros, or if they eat a food that, they think might be bad or cause them to be bloated. And people just, they really feel a lot of guilt and a lot of shame about foods that they eat, and almost lose the ability to just enjoy food and to fuel your body. It's such a simple concept. You hear it all the time. You see the hashtags, fuel your body, but many people don't know how to do that or know what it means.
Yeah, I mean, it can definitely get very confusing when you're so focused on eating for aesthetics, and then someone tells you, or a magazine tells you how to do that, whether it's like this diet or X, Y, and Z, like no matter what it is, you're still just really fixated on it.
Right.
So when you start going on a plan and then you're staying on it, and then all of a sudden you go off for one particular thing, and one of those things could just be literally living your life.
Right.
anyway, one way or another. You're not doing what you're quote unquote supposed to be doing, so then you feel quote unquote bad. Or you eat something quote unquote bad and not quote unquote good. And that's something that I'm super passionate about too, like naming foods as good or bad. And as a dietitian, how do you kind of go about telling people health foods versus non-health foods without using those negatively associated words?
Yeah, so it can be challenging because, and I try to tread lightly with people as well, because people can get really defensive. One of the things I first look at with people is, are there certain foods you avoid and why? And let's kind of dive into that a little bit deeper. If I get the people that are the no dairy, the no gluten, no this, no that, I want to know, why do you avoid those foods? Is it, well, I think it makes me bloated, or is it your doctor ran a test that showed you do have issues with gluten, and try to look at those factors a little bit more.
That's so true. I feel like when I ask people, like, what do you do for your nutrition? Even if I'm not trying to tell them what to do, I just simply ask. And they say, I avoid carbs. I try to not eat bread. I try to not eat dairy too often. And I'm just like, I ask why? Do you know why?
Because a lot of times people think they're supposed to eat that way, and they don't know exactly why, but they eat that way. And, as a dietitian, a lot of times people self-report inaccurately. They tell me what they think I want to hear. I mean, that is the worst thing they could do, because I can't help someone if they're not being honest with me. Don't tell someone what you think they need to hear. Just the first step is being honest with yourself. It sounds simple, but a lot of people struggle with being honest with themselves in terms of what they're eating and why, or what they're choosing not to eat. Whether it's a valid medical issue and they have to remove foods, or if it's a fear of certain foods, that's a huge thing to dive into. So a lot of times when I work with people, I don't immediately say, unless a doctor told you not to, we need to get this back in your diet right now. I try to work with people with where they're at, because I think we all have to take those little baby steps to work on our comfort level with food, but really, improving that relationship with food is got to be the first step. Before you decide I want to lose weight, or I want to get abs, or I want to gain muscle, it's so critical to work on that relationship with food. And a lot of people don't want to do that because it doesn't give you that instant gratification. But it
doesn't sell a program.
It doesn't sell a book. I'm not going to make $1 million selling this concept, but it's so critical because that is what's going to help you make lifelong changes. And if you can't improve that, you are going to continue a vicious cycle of dieting down, getting your abs, and then all of a sudden, you gain 20 pounds because you want to eat normal, or you feel ashamed that, like post-competition, like you were saying, if you all of a sudden eat differently or go off your typical meal plan or macros, you feel guilty, you feel shameful, or, you have been starved for a while, so you decide, I want to go out and I want to eat a big-ass froyo, and, oh my God, did I just binge? And then people think they've binged, and, just all these emotions associated with food. It's really hard to find anyone that doesn't have that emotional attachment with food. So it's really, really crucial to kind of assess that and to get people thinking about their own relationship with food and how it's impacting their choices and their ability to reach their goals.
And then you told me previously that one of the two main things that people come to you with in terms of a food relationship issue is a binging issue. And I feel like that's a big trending word, but not necessarily that it's just a trending word, because there's a lot of emotion and difficulty attached to that word. Do you think it's new and emerging and people didn't binge before? Or do you think that people always have, but now they're just talking about it more?
Yeah, I have a couple thoughts on this. I do feel like, unfortunately, with the evolution of bikini competitions in particular, and it's not just to isolate females, this happens with men as well. So, but I do feel like with bodybuilding, I think bikini really has helped grow bodybuilding over the past few years. And, I do think in some ways the sport does lead to some of these issues. At the same time, with social media, I feel like binge eating becomes kind of trendy. And I'm going to be real and say that, and some people may not agree with that, but I feel like in some ways it's trendy to say you have binge eating disorder and to put it out there on social media. And I think that's sad, and I don't think that's good, because then it seems like people have this misunderstanding of what binge eating disorder is. And it is truly a diagnosis. There is DSM-5 criteria for what dictates what binge eating disorder is.
Yes, and it has to be like you have to have had an episode for X amount of days in a row. There's specific criteria.
Criteria for the time, the amount of times it happens, the calorie load of what you're eating. We're not just talking post-show. You've been dieting for weeks and weeks and you're friggin' hungry and you want to eat a big ass meal till you're so full you have to put on your Thanksgiving sweatpants.
Thanksgiving dinner is not a binge eating
That
episode.
is not binge eating.
Right.
That's spending time with your family, eating an abundance of foods, and that's very normal.
Right. And then also back to the trendiness of binge eating. So you said that there's a trend in saying that you have a binge eating thing, even though it might necessarily not be the disorder. But I also think it's trendy nowadays as well to own being not on top of your plan, just because you can say like, I'm loving myself, I'm eating food and I'm living life. And then you can kind of like cause that to be like a trend to overeat.
Correct.
Which is another interesting kind of spin on things.
That's
Because a lot of people are excited about bodybuilding and being super, super dedicated. And then there's another kind of group of people or like trend going on as well where people are just like, nope, I'm eating a lot and I'm living my life and I'm enjoying it.
Absolutely.
And like, that's another kind of
as a dietitian, I struggle with that because it is the extremeness again of like self-love and let's promote self-love and where we're at and like, let's embrace, the bodies we live in, which I absolutely also agree with. But
absolutely.
It, again, comes down to that bottom line of health. And you have to think about your health. It's not a number on the scale. It's not about if you're following your meal plan. It's thinking about what are you putting into your body and how is it making you feel, at the end of the day, at the end of the week, the month. If you look back over your food choices, are you making food choices based merely on taste? Or are you making food choices based on how those foods are going to impact your health today, tomorrow, 10 years from now? And a lot of times we don't do that, but you're right with the social media and promoting that stuff. Sometimes it almost, right now thick is in, before it was like real skinny anorexic looking was in. And I think it's great.
Then, like being bikini composition shredded was in and then
shredded. And now it's like having a booty as big as you can possibly get is in, and everything like circles back. And at some point being super skinny with twig legs is going to be the ideal of what we want again. It really just depends on social media and, what's going on in the world. But so that's why at the end of the day, you really need to, you got to somehow accept the body you were born into, the organism that you live in, that you're not going to change that unless you surgically change it and enhance it or do something different. That is the body.
Kylie Jenner.
Yes. Oh God, don't get me going on that girl, that child who looks like she's not a child.
Oh gosh. That extreme as well as to where people think that comes from exercise and diet.
Oh yeah. I posted on my Instagram
anything like
you're not ugly, you're just broke. That's like if I had all the money in the world, I could look like that, sure, money buys everything. But, at the end of the day, we have to think about the bodies we live in and how we want them to feel. And not just today in the world, in a bikini competition. I think a lot of younger generations don't think about it. And I can admit to that in my 20s, I just wanted to be thin. I just wanted to be skinny. I wanted to fit my clothes. I wanted to be tiny. I liked if people commented on that. And so it took a lot to kind of change that mindset and focus more on health and be more conscious of how your eating choices impact your health and how you feel on a daily basis. Would love to get people to just stop focusing on your body in general. Commenting on someone's body, whether they're at their thinnest, whether they've gained weight, whether they're maintaining their weight. I think it's best we just don't comment on each other's bodies. I'm not sure what good that does anyone. I can't think of a reason.
Even if it's a compliment.
Yeah, can anyone think of that? And there's nothing
ego
worse.
Boosting, ego dropping.
Right, making yourself feel better, making yourself feel worse by commenting on other people's bodies.
Temporarily, though. It's that instant gratification that we're all dying for.
Right.
Like the 10 tips to make your tummy flatter in 10 days. That kind of crap.
I challenge anyone listening to this podcast to think about how frequently you're commenting on people's bodies, whether it's in person or on social media accounts. I challenge you to not do that and try to be more mindful of commenting on people's bodies. Mm-hmm. When you're competing and you're shredded, everyone's telling you how amazing you look. And then when you're just all of a sudden not living that lifestyle anymore, the comments go away.
Right.
That some people can't handle that. Their self-esteem.
Well, it changes the way that you think about yourself because we're taking all this information in and we think about ourselves in what other people say about us because we're just constantly getting feedback from people with social media, with comments.
Right.
We're just getting that feedback
Instant
all the
gratification,
time.
Or not always great, but.
Yeah, exactly. So it just changes the way you think about yourself based off of what other people think about you.
Right.
And then when you're not eating for health or how you feel, you don't feel good.
Right.
Not always. So another thing that you mentioned was that people seem to think that they don't deserve to reach their goals and they self-sabotage. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I think that's something that limits a lot of people. I work with a lot of non-competitors too. Sometimes we're in this competitor bubble, but the average person struggles with weight loss. I mean, that's a common issue. The obesity epidemic in America is, it's overwhelming. And one of the constant things that I work on people with their eating choices is they will admit they'll self-sabotage. They may not recognize it at first, but when you kind of start to assess what happened, if I have someone that comes to me and says, Kara, I got to be honest with you, last night, I wasn't even hungry. And then before you knew it, I had eaten through my entire kitchen and I'm sorry, but today's a new day and I'm going to start fresh. And I'm like, okay, but let's backtrack. Let's take a look at what happened last evening. What were you going through? What were you feeling? What precipitated that event? And let's think about this a little bit more, and then that's when we start peeling the layers and people say, well, ever since my boyfriend broke up with me, or I started a new job and I have a lot of stress and, this is my time alone at night. And, and you start to kind of look at what are some of those triggers that cause those things. And a lot of times we are using that emotional eating as filling some kind of void in our life, or if we're feeling upset about something, even if we're feeling happy, a lot of times we use food, to kind of make us feel better. That temporary satisfaction that we get, that hormone boost that we get temporarily, people use that. And
food is very social too, and that makes a huge difference.
Yeah. And a lot of times we're almost self-medicating versus we don't want to feel our emotions. It's very common for people to not want to feel emotions. If they're not happy emotions, we don't want to feel sad. We don't want to feel lonely. We don't want to feel stressed out. And food can be a way to kind of numb that. And then unfortunately, what happens is people feel even worse afterwards because they know they, didn't want to eat all that food, or they know they didn't need it, or they know they made bad choices. And, sometimes it comes down to almost self-sabotage in a way because people just they're choosing to not feel their feelings and to take a step back and really assess what's going on in my life. It takes a lot to do that. It takes a lot to be mindful and to learn mindfulness. And in that moment, you have to take a step back before you start running through the whole kitchen eating everything.
Right.
Late at night, which is a common habit. You have to take a step back and say, why am I doing this? What's going on right now?
Right.
Am I really hungry, or what is it that I'm trying to accomplish right now?
Yeah. And then when you have a client that comes to you with those kinds of issues, or if you just have a client that comes to you and doesn't even realize that they have those kinds of self-sabotaging mindsets, what's your solution? So how do you tell somebody, so you overeat or you undereat or you do X, Y, and Z, that's why you're not reaching your goals. So what do you tell them to do in order to kind of cure them, fix them, even if it's not something that you necessarily have to fix? How did they change in a positive way?
Right. So, one of the things, whether it's overeating, undereating, is to think about the triggers. Like I said, it's really important to figure out what things trigger you to have these behaviors. And when you start to look at the triggers, it's thinking about, again, you have to kind of dive a little deeper with why do these situations trigger me. For example, I can get triggered in stressful situations if I feel like, I didn't do a good enough job, or if I'm just overwhelmed and I'm not meeting the standard for what I need to meet in work. And then I just feel like there's part of me that's not, I didn't do what I needed to do, so I need to fill that void somehow. So it's really first figuring out what those triggers are. And then once you figure out what those triggers are, being able to recognize them, being able to take the time to say, wait a second, am I going to reach for the vending machine right now because I'm truly hungry, or am I stressed out and I'm trying to self-medicate? And so that's the first step that can be really challenging, is to first, know the triggers. Then number 2, be able to recognize when it's in the present, when it's going on right here, right now. Recognize that that's what's happening. And usually what I encourage people to do is, I always say, it's progress, not perfection. So recognize it, and then at least give yourself 5 minutes. That's what I recommend people do. Give yourself 5 minutes. If you can take a quick walk, if you can journal and let it out, write down what's going on in your mind right now, before you overeat or emotionally eat, just kind of take 5 minutes to think about what you're really doing, assess what you're doing. Is this eating out of hunger right now? Is this something I truly am craving and I want to eat? Am I going to feel guilty after the fact? And give yourself that time to process it and decide if it's, if in 5 minutes you still want to go to the vending machine and get yourself a Snickers bar, then do it and be good with it. Be fine with it. Say, I am going to eat this damn Snickers bar. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to taste it. It's going to be delicious. And I'm going to carry on with my day. And that can be really tough for people to do. Or maybe,
absolutely.
Or maybe in that
That's
5
huge.
minutes you decide, you know what? I got my mind off this and I don't need this right now. I acknowledge that I'm just eating for other reasons and I don't want to do that right now. But it's not always going to be perfect. You're not always going to be so mindful that you say no to everything. It's not about self-discipline. It's about getting to better understand yourself and your body, and the emotional aspect of it,
Yeah, it's not always about being right and making the right decisions.
Absolutely.
I feel like that's a huge thing where people just always think that they have to Amanda, is this good or is it bad? Should I eat this? I think it's wrong. I think it's right, or whatever. It's not always about if it's going to be right. It's just about making better decisions
Absolutely.
and being more mindful of the way
Right.
that you think and the way that you decide to do things.
Right, very much so. A lot of people come to me and they're like, just tell me what to eat, tell me when to eat. I will do exactly
don't even
what
want to
you
think
say.
about it. Right.
You're the dietitian, tell me what to do, and I'll do it 110%. And I'm like, that's not an ideal client to me, actually. I don't strive for everyone to be that disciplined because I just don't think it's realistic. I want to help people learn. And it's tough because a lot of people don't want to feel those feels, but the more you allow yourself to feel them and better understand why you're making some of those decisions behind food, you'll eventually be more successful with whatever your goals are with weight loss.
Yeah.
And being more focused on your health and not feeling so guilty if you do want to eat a Snickers bar, and a lot of people wouldn't think I would say that because I am a dietitian. So, the thing should be, I'm saying no Snickers bars, but
exactly.
it's
That's
not
how
the
a lot of
case.
dietitians and nutritionists work too. Not everybody's as
Right.
mentally focused. It's more just
Right.
nope, that's a bad food. You shouldn't eat it. So don't.
Absolutely. Yeah. And every dietitian is so different. So not every dietitian would agree with my approach either, but I just find it so important to be able to live your life. And I think it's important to eat for health, the majority of the time, but I'm never going to say I don't love myself a cookie or a donut or a bacon cheeseburger. Okay. Those are all things I love. And everyone's got those foods they love, and there's no reason you shouldn't be able to fit them in and not feel guilty about it or upset about it or hate yourself the next day or feel the need to write a post on social media saying, I'm so bloated because I ate this and I'm going to go train it off. It doesn't work that way. Your body is amazing. Your body can digest anything, any of those foods. You're going to be okay. And a lot of people just freak out. They don't know they don't know how to handle it.
Yeah, and then that's how the cycle kind of continues because
Right.
they're not sure how to handle it, so they are stressed.
Right.
And then there it is again.
Right. It's a vicious cycle. Yeah.
So why don't we talk a little bit about, I know that Karen and I had lunch earlier and we were talking about YouTube comments.
Right.
And of course, YouTube comments can be very constructive and there's plenty of people that have good feedback and there's plenty of people that appreciate what you have to say. But then there's also those few people that are like, Carrie, you're a dietitian. What are you doing with bacon?
Right.
Why are you eating that?
Right.
What's kind of your response to those people? And why do you think that that's not necessarily the right question to ask?
Yeah, I mean, I do get that a lot. I think in any of those full day of eating videos, it's almost like you've got those people waiting to dislike it and then comment on every wrong food you're eating, in particular with bacon or my love for Velveeta cheese on my egg whites or something. It's funny because the way those comments are written sometimes, I'm always open to feedback. I love feedback. I like being criticized. I'm actually very good with that. But
I'm the same way.
what's tough is when people write the responses that are right versus wrong. Like, you are wrong because you're eating bacon, and here's the reason why you're wrong, and it's horrible, and you're an awful role model. How can you be doing this when you're a dietitian? You're going to get cancer. You're going to die. This is so bad, you know?
They're so steadfast in their response too. Like, they just think it's the Bible.
Right. That is the way it's got to be. And you are absolutely wrong. And it's unfortunate because I like to respond and try to educate people on, you know, my whole philosophy with nutrition is all foods can fit. I do not believe in good or bad foods. I hate it. I cringe when people label things as good or bad. That's not how I practice. And so it's hard for me when people see things that black and white, you know, so I do try to respond to them and just say, you know, to each their own, but this is the lifestyle I live. This is why I incorporate these foods. I eat healthy the majority of the time. You know, just because you're watching one little snapshot of what I eat today doesn't mean you know my full diet. The problem becomes with certain comments like that is, instead of them being constructive or us learning from each other, which is what we would like it to be, people just get hateful, you know, and people then just try to write every mean comment they can in the book. And that's when I don't respond. I'm fine with people leaving negative comments as long as they're not super offensive. I just leave them and I don't give them the attention that they're looking for, because sometimes, as you know, that's all they're looking for is they want Amanda Bucci to respond. Like, let me get a response out of her. Let me see if I can fire her up and draw attention to me.
Right.
You know, a lot of times, unfortunately, it's more about that than that educational moment, which is what I'd like it to be. Yeah. And a lot of times it's not.
Right.
So that gets challenging.
Right. I like to think of it as like giving the people with true questions the response.
Right.
And then giving the people with compliments a response. And then giving the people that don't have those complimentary or like constructive criticism or questions, they come last.
Yep.
And then that's impossible to get to everybody at that point too. So then you just try to like take it, and then if there's truly questions, you address it in the future.
Right.
So with that being said, we have some questions. We've talked plenty about eating for health, eating with balance, but there's still so many questions out there. Like, okay, so what am I supposed to eat?
Right.
How do I pick foods? If everything can fit, how do I go about doing that? Because there's so much freedom and there's so many options. And then there is the aspect of actually eating for health. So what do you kind of say to that? We can talk about just simply like eating for fueling your body, number one, and fueling your insides and making yourself a healthy person, number two.
Right. So I like to kind of focus on educating people about not just telling someone what they should eat, the why behind it with the health. So thinking about things like inflammation in today's day and age is so huge with all the types of things that are pro-inflammatory. So, you know, trying to educate people on, for instance, eating things like berries and fruits and citrus. And, you know, I get a lot of people that have the misconception that, well, it's super high in sugar, so I shouldn't be eating those things. And that's all they see. The blinders are up and all they see is sugar. Even though
it's an apple sugar.
It's natural sugar, you know. And people forget about all the vitamins and minerals. And so I try to focus on teaching people those high nutrient dense foods. Or, you know, right now I'm learning about functional foods in a course that I'm taking to become an integrative and functional dietitian.
Oh, cool.
So I'm learning a lot about different foods and how they can help pretty much be medicine to the body, you know, as more of a complementary practice. You know, instead of just waiting till you don't feel good, let's proactively fuel our body with foods that are going to help heal ourselves, you know, that are known to have some common benefits, you know, even in herbs and seasonings. That's something I wasn't super familiar with, like going through college, and I'm like getting more comfortable with now, you know, things like turmeric and ginger and things like that can have a lot of helpful properties like in your body. It's amazing what those things can do for you. So just trying to help teach people to be more focused on choosing foods that way and getting in a variety of foods that way. And then the other thing too that a lot of people don't think about is just how they feel on a daily basis. Are you feeling tired every day? Do you feel bloated and crampy after each meal? Like, how are you feeling after you eat? And really starting to like process that and maybe even document it. Like, I like journaling more than just like plugging things into my fitness pal. Like, I want people to actually like take a look at what they ate that day and really like think about how it made them feel overall. You know, if you're fueling yourself with really nourishing foods, you're getting in, whole grains, and you're eating a variety of different colored fruits and vegetables, and you're getting in some protein and, calcium and all those great things, usually you feel better. Usually as an athlete, you perform better, or in your everyday life, in your work, you're more focused, so really thinking about how your food choices are starting to play a role in your daily functions, because it really can dictate how you live your life.
Right.
It's very powerful.
Yeah. And people don't really think about that. Like, you wake up and you ask, why am I so tired today?
Right.
And you don't really think about, like, maybe it's the diet that I'm continuously eating, and maybe it's the foods that I'm not getting, and maybe it's like the deficiency in a certain vitamin or mineral.
Right.
So could you tell us like 5 to 6 foods or something that you would tell people to, like, you should kind of include this in your diet daily, weekly, whatever, like from what you've learned from your course that you're taking right now?
Sure. Okay. So I definitely promote salmon would be number one. I think that's a great source of protein to add into your diet. It's known to be a fattier fish. It's naturally a fattier fish that is high in omega-3s. It's kind of that, we call it brain food. It helps with your brain. It helps you focus better, and it can help you perform better. Oh, salmon's so good, and it's, even though it's a fatty fish, it doesn't have to kill your fat macros per se if you're tracking fat macros. You don't have to eat it every day, but it's something great to add in a few times a week. So often people think with their food choices at all, like they don't think about like choosing the best sources of food, say if you're someone that loves fat, and they just want to eat all their fat and peanut butter, which I can relate to, but
relatable.
Right. But thinking about just using more variety. So, incorporating that into your fat for the week or your protein sources for the week. So salmon, I would say, is definitely a top food. Let's see, any type of dark green, if I can be general about it.
Yeah, you can be general.
So anything like kale, collards, spinach, getting in some leafy greens has tons of minerals in it. It's also a good source of calcium, which, we have a lot of people that can't tolerate dairy. It can be tough to get enough calcium through the diet without dairy, but that is one thing you'd want to definitely incorporate. Let's see, I would definitely say berries. So I would say either strawberries, raspberries, blueberries, blackberries. Excellent source of fiber, water dense, so it's also going to hydrate you. Great source of antioxidants, so it's going to help combat any of that oxidation within our bodies. So often we forget that working out causes stress in the body. It's not all rainbows and ponies and it's great. We got to work out and we made gains. You're causing stress in your body. So I often recommend for people to incorporate, antioxidants post-workout, some source of berries, citrus, what have you. It's great to replenish that post-workout.
So what about like a carb source?
So a carb source, I would say, God, I love carbs. I'll say that first. But I would say quinoa is something that people don't often include, which is a great source of carbohydrate. It's one of our ancient grains that's been around a long time, so it is very high in vitamins and minerals. And you do get a little bit of protein from it as well if you're someone that is looking to maybe incorporate a little more plant-based proteins versus just eating all the meat, all the animals. So that's another great food.
And then maybe like a fat source.
Another fat source. So I would say like walnuts, actually. I don't know if a lot of people eat walnuts.
Yeah.
And I do love avocado, so I guess I'm giving you 6. But again, that's kind of, walnuts are known to be like a serotonin producing food. So that can actually help like boost your mood, which I think is crucial because food definitely impacts your mental health and how you're feeling on a daily basis. So, trying to make more mindful choices about what's going to make you feel healthier at the end of the day. We live in a world right now where we have people that are obese, but they are diagnosed malnourished because we are not choosing food based on health. We're not choosing foods that give us vitamins and minerals. So we live in a world of obesity with folks that are malnourished, which just blows my mind.
And also obesity along with depression, along with anxiety, along with all those things that can connect directly back to your diet and exercise.
Absolutely. And, the other thing we're really learning about too is with gut health is really a big trending topic right now, at least in the world of dietetics. The impacts your gut health has on the rest of your body and your mental health. They're seeing folks that are better taking care of their gut health. And when I say that, I mean by properly getting in the right prebiotics, probiotics, eating the right foods for what makes them feel good can impact your mental mental health.
And everybody's different in what those foods are.
Absolutely. It's very individualized. And actually it comes down to, you should all call your mothers tonight and ask them what they were eating when you were in the womb, because that's when it starts.
Interesting.
So call up Mama Bucci and say, what were you eating when I was in there? Because that they're finding is that's where it starts creating your gut microbiome with what bacteria is in there, good and bad. And some people just don't have a good microbiome, or sometimes people are eating foods, maybe it is gluten that's causing inflammation, and it is making you feel depressed. It's making your joints feel achy. It's making you feel lethargic. So there's so many different interactions within the body that food plays a role into.
Right.
And I'd like to get people to start thinking more about that versus, do I have a six-pack?
After this whole hour that we've been talking, and then you just said, do I have a six-pack? You just kind of realize how insignificant that statement truly
Isn't it,
is.
though? Seriously,
when we're
who
going
cares?
back and forth about talking about mental health, body positivity, gut health, actual just general health, and then we go back to six-pack abs. And then you just realize what's truly important. It's all about perspective.
It's a hard concept to sell on social media, I'll be honest. It's hard to post a picture and really get that same passion for it across, because it's not just about looking at a selfie. It's not about just looking at a picture of how much body fat you have. It's so much more. And I mean, how many people walk around every single day feeling horrible, feeling tired, feeling lethargic, like they can't concentrate, like they got home from work and have nothing more to give. Mm-hmm. And then that impacts all your relationships. It impacts your social life.
So many people can relate.
It impacts everything. So we have to go back to basics. We don't need to be on a fad diet. We need to bring it back to basics.
Right.
Everyone is different. There isn't one cookie cutter way, which is why there's dietitians. That's why there's people to help you figure it out. And it's good to be proactive. I wish more people would be proactive and preventative instead of waiting until disease hits.
Yes.
And then treating it. Because at that point, there's only so much you can do.
Yeah.
And even sometimes that's not enough. People have heart attacks and they still don't want to change their diet. So
I specifically remember being in the hospital treating people that had 10 different kinds of medications every single day.
Right.
And they would choose a Coke over a water every time.
Yeah.
And there's so many ways to prevent getting to that point.
Right.
And again, like you said, many of them come back to what you're choosing to eat, how you're choosing to eat it, the reasons you're choosing to eat it, and how you feel about it.
Right. And, a lot of people feel invincible, they don't think about that that's going to have any impact on them someday. And I'm not saying don't sit down and enjoy a meal and have fun with it by any means, but just being more mindful about the choices you're making and really not choosing every meal based on taste, based on flavor and convenience, really putting some time and effort into your health, because we are all worth it. We have one life to live, and why not live it feeling good in the bodies that we were born into?
Mm-hmm. And we own two things, our body and our name.
Right.
So I think people get very confused when they look at food labels that say superfood, sugar-free, fat-free, gluten-free, organic, all natural. That's a very kind of misleading thing where it tells people this is what's better.
Absolutely.
So can we talk about what each of those things truly means and why it's not necessarily the right thing to always go for? Let's start with superfood.
Superfoods, I don't know if I've seen a lot of food labeled with this, but I think it is starting to become a bit more trendy as we are realizing there are functional foods that have more health properties. But a superfood is really something that is going to provide additional benefit to your body above and beyond, basic nourishment. So it's got some other functions there. For instance, I think about antioxidant properties. So something such as blueberries. As a dietitian, I would consider that a superfood because it doesn't just provide you with a source of carbs and natural sugar, but it provides you with that antioxidant benefit in your body.
Right.
But you don't see a lot of blueberries walking around labeled superfoods. That's part of the problem with food claims is there's not a lot of regulation. So the FDA doesn't regulate everything that's put on those packages with those claims. Right. So it's really important as a consumer to kind of get educated to what those claims mean, or to just not even if you don't know all the definitions, but just remember that just because something has a claim on it, it doesn't mean it's necessarily healthy for you.
And then again, it's back to that. instant gratification. So superfood might equal instant health.
Right.
And it doesn't always just equal instant health. Of course, it's good to add it in, but just kind of understanding what they mean and being self-aware.
I think about Cheerios because that's the biggest thing I would see in the hospital is if someone had a heart attack, Cheerios say right on the box, lowers cholesterol levels. So automatically I'm going to buy myself Cheerios and that's the end all be all. And that is going to prevent me from, having another heart attack and lowering my cholesterols. And there's so many more things you could incorporate in the diet other than that. So that sexy advertising gets you.
Sexy advertising, I know.
Every time.
The marketing does.
It's a business.
It's business, but
it's definitely business.
That's why we're here to educate. So let's talk about sugar-free.
Sugar-free. So sugar-free.
Why people go towards it and why, and like explain kind of like what the actual is.
So I think a lot of people previously went towards it and sugar-free got really big, with diabetes in particular and trying to make lower carb choices or, low sugar. People had the understanding they can't have any sugar in their diet. So I think
because they have diabetes.
Because they have diabetes, right? And then it just became kind of a dieting technique. It just, lower sugar is better for me. The less sugar, the better. So when you look at a label that says sugar-free, it should say 0 grams of sugar. However, there's always that little but in there. You do need to read the ingredients and see what's in there. You also need to look at a serving size and understand what a serving size means because with labeling regulations, they only have to tell you based on that serving size what is in there.
Right.
So something may look to be sugar-free if you have 1 serving of it, which could be 1 teaspoon. But if you plan on having 3 tablespoons of something, it may actually have a few grams of sugar in it. So really understanding what ingredients are going into these products, you need to look at the food label and see the serving size. Then you need to look at the ingredients and use some critical thinking and say, if this has agave in it, I think there is sugar in that, so you have to kind of look at that. You have to look beyond those claims on something. I think about the Snackwell's cookies. That's more low fat. I don't know if that was one of your things, but when the whole fat-free fad came out in the early 90s and Snackwell's blew up because they had all their fat-free cookies, their cakes, all their little things, and people were eating entire packages. And as a world, we got fatter during that era, And
no kidding.
Yeah. We got much larger during that time span because we had this misconception that fat's bad, so I can eat, as long as it's fat-free, I can eat as much as I want of it. So
and then it just gets into a cycle.
Right.
But with sugar, I feel like people fear sugar so much because they feel like it's going to either make them fat or it's going to spike their insulin.
Absolutely.
Or it's just a terrifying thing. So people say, okay, sugar-free, great. Or it has sugar in it. No, I shouldn't eat it.
Right. And people also think if they eat sugar, it's going to give them diabetes, which is another misconception. Our bodies are fueled off sugar. Sugar is a carbohydrate. That is our brain's main energy source. So, if you're someone that's cutting out all sugar in your diet, I would like to know how you're feeling on a day-to-day basis, what your cognitive function is like, because your body needs sugar. It's okay to have sugar in there, and it's unfortunate that those misconceptions are still out there because I see a lot of people who don't eat any fruit. They just think fruit is the enemy because of all that sugar in there. Mm-hmm. But what they're not realizing is if you're eating an apple, you're also getting tons of other nutrition with it, especially if you're eating the skin of an apple that has the fiber and all the nutrition in there. And your body is going to love using that sugar. I'm not saying if you're a diabetic, you don't need to watch it, but the average person, we need sugar in our diets.
Yeah. And then for those people that are tracking their macros and are curious about like, okay, how much actual sugar should I have a day? I get that question a lot. Mm-hmm. Do you tell people there's a certain amount that you should limit yourself at, or there's a certain amount that is normal to have?
I honestly usually don't, because what I find is it is very individualized. Now, don't get me wrong. If someone's eating 250 grams of sugar on a daily basis, depending on that person and whatever their medical history and their family history looks like, that may be something we want to work on. But in my experience, some people with low sugar in their diet, where if I told them to eat the recommended daily sugar grams and said, hey, only have 50 grams of sugar a day, would feel horrible and would function horribly throughout their day-to-day basis. My husband's one of them. He gets cranky AF, okay, if he doesn't have sugar in his diet. And like if he's under a certain amount of sugar grams, he just can't even think And that's like the number one thing. I'll be like, have you had enough sugar today?
Right.
No, I haven't. Whereas other people don't. We all respond differently. Our bodies respond differently to different macro and micronutrients. And, for sugar, some people just need a little bit more in their diet. Yeah. Depending on your training, depending on your lifestyle.
Definitely depending on your training.
Right.
It fuels
Absolutely.
not just sugar, but carbohydrates, and that in general can fuel a workout because it's your main source of energy. You can still get energy from protein and fat intake as well, but carbohydrates are the main source.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the helpful things during marathon training for me. For a lot of years, I trained without having any source of glucose coming in. I would do a 3-hour run and not bring in any glucose. My body was burning through everything I had stored, and couldn't function, and I would hit a wall. That's that runner's wall that you hit because you're not bringing in any glucose.
Would you supplement with an intra-run?
Yep, an intra. Yeah, I used to get like goos, they were called, and it was basically just a little easy pouch of like flavored goo, and it was just like 15 grams of carbs, all sugar, and it would, if you properly timed when you needed to bring that glucose in throughout your runs, that could make all the difference with your performance and how you feel.
Right.
So it's crazy how much that impacts you.
Yeah, that one was definitely helpful. One that I'm kind of curious about is the organic label. So some people say, like, as long as it's organic, you can eat it.
No, it doesn't matter. Organic does not mean it's healthier. Organic has
That's a huge statement. Repeat that again.
It has not. It's not healthier.
Organic does not mean healthier.
Has nothing to do with health. And you can disagree with me if you want, but all it has to do with is the pesticides and how if it's sprayed or not sprayed and what it's used when it's farmed and raised. And even still, for something to be certified organic, you can never guarantee when you walk in a grocery store that something didn't contaminate that and make it non-organic, essentially. You never really know. But in terms of health benefits, the bigger thing you should focus on, which is difficult, but if you can eat something locally grown, if you can eat something that hasn't been sitting on a grocery store shelf for 3 weeks versus getting a fresh picked orange, that's going to make the difference in how healthy something is.
Market.
Absolutely, because the longer fruits and vegetables, things like that sit there, the vitamin content diminishes.
Right.
So it's really hard to know when you're eating that orange out of your fridge how much of that vitamin C you are actually absorbing, So focusing more on eating local versus organic, non-organic. Yeah, there's the dirty dozen that maybe people pay attention to that are kind of known to be the dirtier fruits and vegetables. Some people avoid that. So a lot of times those are like berries. I think bell peppers are on there. Those are the ones that they test and they're like known to be the dirtiest. So
gotcha.
Obviously,
you can probably look all those up, guys.
You rinse your vegetables, you rinse them. You don't need to buy a special wash or anything, and all is going to be fine in the world. But it does not mean that they're healthier.
Right.
Whatsoever. They're definitely more expensive as well.
Yeah, guys. So Miss Dietitian is telling you don't have to buy the more expensive broccoli on the shelf today.
Now, what I should say, because I'm sure some people will mention this, is meats being organic versus non-organic.
Gotcha.
So that, in some ways they do add antibiotics and things like that. That's kind of a big craze as well. I think you could get organic grass-fed, meats and things like that. And that is just going to make
cage-free eggs.
Cage-free. That kind of stuff, I actually do incorporate that in my own diet. Is incredibly more expensive. But in terms of bottom line protein content and, the amount of B12 or things like that you're getting, it's going to be no different if it's organic versus non-organic.
Gotcha.
So,
and then last one is going to be gluten-free. So why do people think that they have to eat gluten-free? And then why do some people actually have to eat gluten-free?
Right. So gluten-free has been around for a very long time and has evolved immensely. I'd say probably the last 5 to 6 years, they've really expanded the market for gluten-free with what's available. 10 years ago, it all tasted like cardboard and it was horrible and no one bought it. And then we started becoming more aware of autoimmune diseases and people actually really requiring gluten-free diets. With that, along came it turning into a trendy diet, a means to lose weight. Because if you're gluten-free, it kind of simplifies the process so that you can't choose any of those, do I say bad carbohydrates? Those breads and the cake and, all the junk food. It kind of, in a way, eliminates a lot of that. Not totally, though. You can certainly find a ton of junk food, gluten-free food.
Right.
But in terms of social situations, to say, sorry, I'm gluten-free really eliminates a lot of higher calorie, maybe not so nutrient dense options.
Right.
So it became this super trendy thing to go gluten-free. And I caution people with that because when you eliminate all gluten from the diet, you are eliminating a lot of other minerals in your diet and fiber.
And you could be causing yourself to be gluten sensitive if you just completely take something away, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, and gluten sensitivity is a big thing too. And it's not to say that it isn't a real issue with gluten sensitivity, but they haven't quite nailed it down yet with diagnosing that, as well as if you truly have celiac disease, for instance. That's a little bit more cut and dry. I think it kind of was like the Atkins low carb phase kind of phased out, and then it turned into gluten free.
Right.
And I don't think Dr. Oz helped with that either, because I think he's a big proponent of that too.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's certainly a lot of mainstream, either quote unquote doctors or people on TV or people who write for magazines that promote all of these fad dieting type mindsets.
Right. And I am of the mindset, to simplify it for those that may be not agreeing with me right now, I am of the mindset that find what works for you. If you acknowledge that when you truly eat all gluten, that you're having some symptoms that, things feel horrible. If you're having bloating, constipation, you're feeling lethargic, then yes, those are reasons to kind of further investigate and see if that's something that maybe shouldn't be in your diet. It's those that just say, well, I'm not going to eat gluten because it's going to make me fat or something. You know what I mean? Those types of people that it's
the uneducated and the ignorant.
Absolutely.
Correct.
Yeah.
I feel like that was very helpful for a lot of people. And if you guys thought it was helpful, you guys can leave a review on iTunes if you guys have iTunes. But if not, you guys can just comment on Instagram or YouTube or something like that. Kara and I will have a video together that you guys probably would have already seen by the time this comes out. So I appreciate you guys listening. And last but not least, we're going to ask Kara where we can find her.
You guys can find me at Kara Corey Fit Life on YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat, and Twitter.
Cool. And then for people that are looking for more help, do you offer coaching or
I do. So you can check out karacorey.com. That's my website. I do offer a 12-week to Bikini Pro program guide. I'm kind of building my website right now as well. Yeah. I hope to eventually put my supplement line on there as well. RD Nutrition, you can find that through tigerfitness.com. But right now, if you go to my website, I have my email address there. I like to individually consult with people before I take them on for coaching. So the best way for me right now to do that has been through email versus just having someone click and sign up. I like to do an assessment to see if it's going to be a good fit.
Right. So if you are looking to work with Kara, she's going to customize everything individually to you. So you can't just go on her website and click a program. You'll have to just discuss with her first and make sure that you guys are a right fit. But yeah, I'm excited to have you here, and I appreciate your time. I appreciate you coming all the way to Los Angeles just to do this podcast, even though the weather here wasn't that great this weekend.
Totally worth it. Totally worth it to get out of Syracuse.
Right. And I hope you guys found this podcast worth it as well. We appreciate Kara being here, and I appreciate you guys listening as well. Thank you so much for paying attention here, and I will catch you guys in the next podcast. Hey friends who are still listening, just one final word for those of you who have made it all the way through and are hearing me at the end here. I just want to remind you guys again, for those of you who are an aspiring fitness influencer who want to be part of the small group that I'll be personally coaching over the next 12 weeks, just click over to amandabucci.com/apply and quickly fill out the application there before the spots are filled up. For the record, spots are not first come, first serve, so I will be examining all of the applications to see who will be the best fit for the group. So I'm going to be going through them all. But for the first 15 to 20 people who I feel like are a great fit, those will be the only ones that have the opportunity to join. So one last time, you can go ahead and go to amandabucci.com/apply if you feel connected to this right now. So thank you guys again. I'll see you in the next one.